If you only know Bill Montgomery as the Celina Insurance guy, you're about to realize you've been missing the best part of the story. We recorded this one and immediately looked at each other like, wow, we can't wait to post this. Because Bill isn't just a successful business leader, he's a walking library of moments. The kind of person who can go from turning $2 into a trip, to breaking down on the way to Mexico, to a baseball conversation that changes everything, and he remembers the names, details, and the feeling of the room. So while you might have thought this episode was about Bill Montgomery's accomplishments, it's really not. It's about how someone like that thinks, pressure, decisions, failure, fear, legacy, and how you stay present while you're building a life. Hello and welcome to the Two Dads Podcast, episode number 52. It is our 1 year anniversary, and I welcome Bill Montgomery to my left, and to my other left, Bill number 2. We got a Bill sandwich almost here. Bill, how you doing, buddy?
I'll be back up, Bill, today, but I'm doing good. Hey, how are you, buddy? Episode 52. It's a big one, and Mitch came in with a number. Okay, Mitch is ready.
I am ready this week.
52, Mitch. Who do you got?
I have Kyle Farmer. I don't know why I know that from the Cincinnati Reds. He was 17 and 52 before that. So I actually have number 52 done and ready. I don't know how many. I'm going to go back through like an Excel spreadsheet and see how many I've gotten right. It's definitely in the low percentile though.
It's probably not the best. Tony Bidlack had a good one when last week 51. I saw he commented with Ross Holman.
He came out swinging on Facebook.
That was a good one. I missed that one. But Bill, you got anybody that used to wear the number 52? Any sport that you can think of?
You know, I'm trying to think. Jack Lambert was 54, I think, and not 52.
Power of the internet. Jack Lambert, looking it up. Jack Lambert was 58.
58.
I had a few. I had a baseball one that I thought Bill might snag, so I had to back up. 52, CC Sabathia was 52. And then 52, I don't know why this resonated with me, but one time when I was watching the Saints losing the playoffs to the 49ers with Justin Feltz and a bunch of guys at McSober's, Patrick Willis decapitated Pierre Thomas, the Saints running back, and he fumbled on the 1 yard line, and we lost by 3.
So sorry about that. It sounds like it's a scarring issue. Does it still sit with you?
Yeah, it was. I don't like the 49ers. I like them more now than I did, but I take every Saints loss pretty bad, other than this year. All 13 of them probably.
Bill Montgomery, how are you today? I have to do this Bill thing now.
I'm terrific. Pleased to be here. Thanks for having me.
We're so glad that you took the time here. And I got to be honest with everybody before we kind of kick off the roundtable section. I had a list of questions for Bill and about, what time do you think that was today that you sent that? Is it this morning?
Yeah, it was like 10 o'clock.
He goes, hey, by the way, this might help you, and provides me with a 2.5 hour documentary on his life. I mean, it was, I can't express how fun it was, first of all, to pivot. I love a pivot, and especially if when a guest comes and says, hey, like, here's some research and stuff that might help you a little bit. But that was one of the most comprehensive documentaries I have ever listened to. I went into it, to be honest with you, I was like 2.5 hours. Even Christy, who works over at Celina Insurance, was like, yeah, we just let you know it's 2.5 hours. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I just set the speed up a little bit. When I jumped into all of that, you have one of the most interesting and eclectic lives. You have lived the lives of so many people.
Well, I've never wanted to be boring, Mitch.
Why did you make that documentary? Just off the cuff. I mean, what was the preservation of, or the reason?
Well, it was while I was still of sound mind and body, I wanted to chronicle my life, really, for my kids and grandkids. I haven't kept diaries, but I've got tons of pictures and videos, and I thought with the help of Celina Group's communications department, specifically Sarah Harlemert, that we could put something together and we could add some narrative and get some help, and it would take a little time. But I was reminded of how American Indians passed down their lore and their stories from one generation to another in their tribes, and they did it by storytelling. That kind of fits my personality, so let's give it a shot.
Do you think we do that too, Bill?
I think
Bill Ray.
Yeah. I think one really cool thing that we've already done that falls right in that category, and Bill, I don't know if you know this, in the early episodes, in the teens, we had Mitch's dad on here. Okay. So that was a really cool thing. You know, I lost my dad pretty young, and to have Mitch's dad on this podcast, I knew what that meant for those two, for you and your dad, right? Like your kids will be able to look back at that episode in the future when, hopefully your dad lives a long, prosperous life, but eventually, right, life catches up with all of us, and there's some sort of documented conversation that they can always show grandpa or great-grandpa, things like that, right? So I think we do encapsulate that, and then I think in the meantime, everybody that's been on this podcast has that same opportunity, right? Like at some point, like I'm not going to be here, and my son or my grandkids are going to be able to come back to this YouTube montage that we decided to put out for 500 to 1,000 episodes when we're done, and people are going to be able to understand me, right? Like if Riker had that same thing for my dad, the stories I tell my son, he could live and kind of understand it instead of us just telling it. So I think we do that in a roundabout way, but the intent of yours is very cool. Mitch sent me the video. I was at work. I didn't have a chance to watch it, but I'll definitely get through it and catch up on it.
One of the things I noticed, the whole theme, right? Like I had questions and things, and then I was like, wow, I'm too surface level for someone like this. Not guilt of it. Let's just go a little bit deeper. Not every guest has that capability. But one of the things I was stunned by was your recall of history, your recollection of history, and not just a recollection of a moment, but I felt like you have the ability to paint the scene. You talked about like what the dirt felt like that day, or you were hanging around the fence when you were a young kid watching this mother lamb and how it stuck with you some 60 years later.
Yeah.
Is that one of your superpowers? Would you say that someone like are you a perceptive man? How would you describe it for people?
I think I am. I mean, it's nothing conscious. It's a gift, perhaps. The ability to remember names and places and events served me well when I served a stint in politics. I can tell you that. I just think it's something that just came to me, just natural, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, Bill, you have to see some of it just to believe it. I mean, it would jump across. Well, I was in Mexico and this guy threatened me in a bathroom, and then I drove back and my dad decided to do the Iditarod, so I drove out to Anchorage, Alaska, and then I had to drive the car home. And
yeah, this drunk Mexican in a cinder block men's room outside of a bar, which had one way in and one way out, peed down my leg.
To prove a point?
I don't really know. He had a cigarette. He was drunk. He had a cigarette hanging out of his mouth, and I could feel something warm and wet going down my right leg. And I turned and looked at him, and then I looked behind me, and there were about 20, swarthy faces, and there was one way in and one way out, and we were only 50 feet from the ocean. I think I better just zip up and get the heck out of here before I get carved up and thrown in the ocean.
Shark food.
Yeah. You ever peed on anybody, Bill?
Pete, I've been peed on. Shout out.
We've got an alumni group here. This is really nice. This is really good to set the tone. Even to have the ability to know when you're lost, that still has some wisdom to it, wouldn't you think?
Well, I suppose, yeah. Some of it's just dumb luck, to be honest, Mitch.
What makes you lucky?
Oh, boy. I think age and experience and life circumstances. We learned that Norman Schwarzkopf, who was our famous United States general in the first Gulf War conflict, said that 90% of what I've learned in life, I learned by doing it wrong the first time. The key is to learn from it and learn from your mistakes, because we all make them.
I want to jump into the 1-year anniversary because I think this is a big deal. We've hit 52 episodes.
Yeah, congratulations, guys.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that a lot.
Some people said we wouldn't make it.
Yeah, I'll bet.
I'm sure there was a lot. I'm sure maybe at certain times we thought we weren't going to make it, but I think it was your mantra that I literally say it every day, and I think there's a lot of people who say it too, and that's 1% better every day. I don't know why that stuck with me, but it's one of the biggest feedback I hear from people in passing on the podcast. 1% better every day. Did you think we would get here?
Honestly, I think when I started, I had a pretty lofty goal. I have I don't know if I want to call it an optimistic trait or a toxic trait. I just set goals so far out there that I can't reach them, and then I try to reach them, right? So in one way, it's like, hey, I'm pushing myself to the limits, but I also don't take time to probably give myself credit, and in this sense, us credit. Of saying 52 weeks. I know you guys that listen to this, I appreciate every single one of you. If you only watch episodes you're interested in versus weekly listeners, right? It's very important to us, and it's very important to the community. And I'm very, very thankful. And to say we've made it a year, yeah, I would have said there was a few weeks there between summer with the food truck, with the podcast. The winter episodes are a lot easier than the summer episodes were. that I know Mitch and I wanted to just shut the mic and walk away from this, but I think us looking at the bigger goal of what we're doing leading up to our event this weekend at Caddy's, raising, hopefully, a bunch of money for Skylar and her family for medical expenses and things like that is why we do this thing. And with that being said, the 1-year anniversary, Mitch and I talked, and we have a very fun announcement. We are going to post on socials this week. We have created something similar to the Emmys and the Grammys, and we will give away awards for our year wrap-up. And we'll do this annually, and we'll wrap up the previous year of all of our guests. And we are going to call them the Daddies. Instead of the Grammys or the Emmys, we're going to call them the Daddies.
Here's what you can expect in the awards. I'll go through these real quick and toss it back to you. Guest of the Year. We're going to have you vote on your favorite episode this year. And Bill Montgomery, you are eligible for this one. You are number 52, just at the end of the cut. I think that's how you've lived your life. You just kind of get right there at the end. You know what I mean? You've always found it. And maybe luck has brought you this as well. Maybe you will earn a daddy. So we have Guest of the Year, most likely to grab a beer with. We thought that was a fun category of someone who doesn't have to be the most exceptional or most in-depth episode, but just someone you'd like to have a beer with. We have best out-of-town guest. We want to make sure that this isn't biased to just people in Mercer County. They're obviously our best episodes. There's no doubt about that. But the reason that we bring guests from out of town, from all over the world, is to share information and different concepts from outside of Mercer County. And I think we'll get into that today with you too, Bill, as we dive into the questions. We have funniest episode, which is great because we've had some really funny guests come on here. I won't bias the group. I've got a few personal favorites that I'm excited to see if you feel the same way that I do. Best advice, a piece of advice that you took away that just said, wow. And I think I'd give it, if I could give it an award, Bill Ray, 1% better every day is, or hey, how are you? Right. Those are my favorite taglines. And then what is AWL down here? What does that stand for?
AWL, award-winning listener. So to all of you out there that listen weekly and make comments on Facebook and YouTube, we will let you guys vote on the award-winning listener. Mitch and I may have a little pull on that one as well. But I think the people that react a lot, and I don't want to bias either, but we talk about a couple people. When you guys talk about us and you comment on Facebook and YouTube, we like to bring you into the episode next week, same as we talked about. Tony Bidlack made the comment for Ross Holman, right? Number 51. So those comments we read, we look at everything. We like to joke and laugh about it. And speaking of Tony Bidlack, special thanks to Tony Bidlack. So we will have 6 awards, 6 daddies. And he has generously donated these awards to us. So he does have a trophy company that he does have, and he is donating these on behalf of Lakeshore Realtors over in Celina. Tony is a real estate agent over there. So if you're buying or selling a home, whether it's rental properties, residence, anything like that, please get a hold of Tony Bidlack at Lakeshore Realtor, and he can help you out whether you're buying or selling your home. And again, thank you, Tony.
Look at you. 52
That's an ad read right there.
I have never seen Bill Ray do such a flawless ad read. Look at this. He's got a smile. If you guys are watching on YouTube, he's got a real smile for this.
Put me in, coach.
Well, speaking of put me in, coach, we had some fun. Bill Ray had messaged me. He said, you got to do community mailbag this week. So we're going to do community mailbag for you. This is where we have listeners come in via social media or email, right? And we bring them in to ask you questions that I did not give you. So you are coming right off the cuff here. Nothing too astray, but questions from people in the area who are curious about you. Are you interested in the community mailbag?
Sure.
All right, it's perfect. Yeah, whatever, man. Okay, so our first community mailbag from Keith Seitz. He emailed us and says, what community involvement or nonprofit in the area stands out most to you and why? Do you have a nonprofit or some kind of community involvement that stands most to you?
Well, I love the Mercer County Civic Foundation. It's done an awful lot of good for this county and Celina and the people and the various charities that it serves. So I'm very partial to the Civic Foundation.
What do they, just so we can spotlight them a little bit, what do they do in the community?
Give out money.
That's good.
Okay.
That's good.
Yeah, to worthy causes. And the assets have grown exponentially since the early 1960s. So it's a pretty substantial organization, and groups or organizations can apply for funds. Sharon Green is a director. She's very able. And she has a board of directors who are also very able and community-minded people.
I love that.
That's awesome.
Thank you for sharing that. Chloe Weaver writes, if you've got a meeting at 1:30, Bill, you got a meeting at 1:30, and you got to call in, okay? This is a call-in conference call, okay? You got a meeting at 1:30. Do you call in at 1:29, exactly 1:30, or 1:31 to give them a second to breathe?
That's a good one. I always try to get on a little bit early. Doesn't always happen. Sometimes there are technical difficulties, and I'm probably the least technical person you've ever met.
Doesn't know a shoe from a phone. Which one do you call in? 1:30, 1:29, 1:30, or 1:31?
Yeah, I'll say 1:30.
That's perfect. Right on the nose. Ryan Spriggs writes,
Oh, I remember Ryan.
who's your favorite Reds player of all time and why?
Well, that's easy. It's Frank Robinson, number 20. Robbie came up in 1956 and, of course, set the rookie record in the National League for most home runs. He had a tremendous career. And following right behind him would have been Wally Post and Veda Pinson. Wally Post is Wendeline, and Wally was our local hero growing up. But if you have to look at a long span of time, it would be Frank Robinson. I've got a shrine with lots of really cool stuff.
We actually, and again, this is the long community mailbag segment, but I don't care. This is how the show works. We actually
It's our show. We'll do it.
Yeah, exactly. Get off my back. But we actually have been doing unpackings for a long time. We went to where were we at in Indiana?
We went to, in Portland, there's an antique mall over there in Portland, and we did a food truck event. Well, Mitch went in. He's like, this place is incredible. Goes in there, and they had old packs of baseball cards. So Mitch bought like all 3 boxes of these old baseball cards.
We knew you were coming, so I have been collecting some of these that I'm going to give to you.
Okay.
And these are some old players. We've got Joe Oliver.
Yep.
John Franco.
Yep.
Eric Davis. Ken Griffey Sr., Paul O'Neill, Chris Sabo, Ron Robinson, Chris Welsh, commentator.
Yep.
Pete Rose, Max Venable. I don't know Mac. Jack Armstrong, Danny Jackson, Rob Dibble, Lloyd McClendon, and Tom Browning. So
I remember all of them.
well, just a gift from the two dads to you. I don't know if that adds to the collection or if the grandkids want something,
I drank a beer with Tom Browning at his bar down in Cincinnati. It was his opening night, and I was down at opening day with Tony Bidlack and Romy Schwederman and Joe Bidlack.
Was it Tom Brenneman? Deep fly ball to center field at the oopsie?
Yeah, that was Tom Brenneman, yeah. Yeah, he was down there, and he was at his bar. He was opening his bar, and he sat down there. He was cool as hell. He just wanted to shoot the shit.
Tom Browning was a personal friend, and I had his cell phone. He came to Celina a couple times, stayed at our company's founder's home, and did a fundraiser for Celina baseball. But more important than that, he helped my youngest son, Scott, before his senior year in high school. Scott was a little left-hander, didn't throw real hard, kind of a late bloomer, and Tom really, really helped him. So I miss him. He's a great guy and a character, but he went too soon.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. That's a great story. Dan Garman writes, when hiring new employees, what's your favorite interview question that reveals something real from the person you're interviewing?
I belong to an organization called Young Presidents Organization, and it's an international group. I'm in the Cincinnati chapter. They boot you out when you're 50 and you belong to an alumni group. But when I was still in YPO, I read an article by a company president, not insurance, but just a company president, and it had to do with the hiring process. And basically, the author said, Mr. or Mrs. President, your time can be no better spent than helping ensure the right people make your team. So he said, what I do, and he said, if you say you don't have the time, he said, that's baloney. So what he said and what I've adopted, and I say it to every, because I have veto power. I am imposed veto power a number of years ago after having made a lot of mistakes. What I say to the person sitting across from me, and they have to get by me, I'm the last line of defense. I say, we draft great attitudes. If you don't have a great attitude, we don't want you, pure and simple. We can help you acquire knowledge. We can help you round out your skill set, but we can't help you get a new attitude. And so for me, it starts and stops with positive attitude. And that has made a difference, I think, in the caliber of folks that join the Celina group. And we've made a few mistakes over the last 30 years, but nothing like we did maybe my first 5 years with the company. And I didn't want to leave the hiring process up to the HR department or to a department head. I wanted to have the last crack. I wanted to be able to look at the candidate across from me and have a candid conversation. I would say to a person, we're not all good at all things. So what are you good at and what aren't you so good at, either personally or professionally? Or maybe put another way, what would you like to improve upon if you could? And they just kind of let it go from there. It's to see how well people know themselves.
It's a great answer. I like it just because I've learned doing interviews. I've done them for a lot of years now. I know I talk a lot on this podcast, and I talk a lot in general. I try to talk the least amount in an interview. If you leave a very short question, I open with a lengthy, hey, this is what our company, this is who I am, this is what we're about. But I leave it open. I let them talk. Because usually if you let them talk, they'll tell you a lot more about who they are and everything else as opposed to you asking probing questions. And it's definitely helped me weed some out where they talk too much and they put their foot in their mouth, or vice versa. They talk themselves into a job because that's what they're good at, interviewing. So I think it's a really good answer.
Well, God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason.
Last question comes from Riker William Ray. Are you ready for this? You're at a baseball game. Mm-hmm. What's the best way to eat a hot dog?
Oh, my gosh. What's the best way to eat a hot dog?
Yeah, what do you put on your dog?
Ketchup, mustard, relish, onions if they have them, and just wash it down with a beer.
That's a loaded dog. How about you, Bill Ray, before we get out of the community mailbag?
If I got to go just basic dog, I'm probably going mustard and onions. I do like a little crunch on there, but I will give Chicago their flowers. I love Chicago-style hot dogs.
Chicago-style hot dog,
I really do.
All right, that's community mailbag. Thank you, Bill Montgomery, for playing that one with us. That was a lot of fun. Hey, podcast listeners, the Polar Plunge is back at the Celina Moose Lodge 1473 on February 21st. Join the Grand Lake Polar Plunge and help support Special Olympic Ohio athletes by signing up as individual or teams, raising pledges, and then taking that ultimate icy jump. Not ready to hit the water? You can still get involved by donating, volunteering, or coming to cheer. And don't forget, costumes are encouraged. And there's a costume contest, plus awards and bragging rights. You can register online or sign up in person the day of. Grab your craziest outfit and come make a difference one cold plunge at a time. So today's guest is Bill Montgomery from Celina Insurance, a 100-plus year hometown business. But the reason we wanted Bill on isn't because of the title on the door. It's because he's lived a lot of life in a way that feels intentional. He's the kind of guy who can talk about turning $2 into a trip, breaking down on the way to Mexico, and somehow still ending up in a baseball conversation that opens doors. He remembers details most people forget, names, moments, the feeling of a room, and you start to realize his superpower is paying attention. He's carried expectations, had defining moments with his dad, learned how to make hard decisions when the stakes are real, and still chose to invest here, in kids, in baseball, in community, while keeping enough margin in his life to find peace in a garden, bird watching, or just watching wildlife on his property. So today we're not doing a highlight reel, we're doing a lesson reel. What he's learned, what he'd do again, what he'd do differently, and how to stay present when you're building a life. So thank you for coming. I appreciate you being here. This was a lot of fun. Thank you for being here. Appreciate you coming on.
It was a big one. There was a lot of people excited locally, but for the ones, again, we have a pretty big listening audience. Not all local Mercer County. Some are all across the country, and we realize that we have a pretty decent following in a small community in Mexico now.
Yes, we in Guatemala.
In Guatemala, sorry.
Yeah, I don't know what small villages picked us up, but they are very much listening.
Somebody likes our stuff down in Guatemala.
Thank you, Guatemala.
Welcome. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you.
But Bill, for everyone in town knows what you do for work and your passion for baseball and what you've done for the community. But what do people usually not realize about you?
Well, in the early 1980s, I played the part of a young father in a McDonald's commercial.
That's a pretty good start.
I auditioned for it. There was a cattle call, and so I was the winner.
Is that your icebreaker when you have to speak at? That's a good one.
It's one of them.
What do you do now? Or is it more quiet days? I mean, what are you focused on?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, like any organization or family or institution, there are ups and downs, and the Celina Group certainly had its challenges in the 80s and early 90s. The last 20 years have really been on the upswing. And I think we had to do some rejiggering and reorganizing, and I can get into all that if you're interested. But we've landed on our feet. We're very careful about who joins our team. I've got a lot of good folks around me. One of my management philosophies is surround yourself with people who are smarter than you are, turn them loose, hold them accountable, and reward them. And we've been very diligent about stocking the shelves from a staff development, from a workforce development scheme, and we've been very diligent about succession planning so that we don't get caught in the lurch when someone retires. That we're ready. We've got people that are already fully formed that can step into the shoes of the person that's retiring. So I think I was probably, because I had to be, more energized when the company was up against it. I mean, I would leave a senior staff meeting after having shared some pretty gloomy news. Now, I'm going back 25 years. And I would say to my people that report to me, usually a half dozen or so, I say, now look, when you walk out of this boardroom, put a smile on your face, throw your shoulders back, puff your chest up, and don't let people see, that you're down or that you're downcast or that you have doubts, because folks can play off that, and they'll play off your cynicism and your negativity. So, kind of act like things are okay, even when they aren't. And, together we'll make this thing work out over time. So today, having had some success, that is the company having had some success, and with the advent in the proliferation of email and iPads and so forth, I'm at the office every day. I'm not there at the crack of dawn, but I'm always accessible.
I think a few things that hit home there for me. You working to already replace future retirements and or probably
That's huge,
promotions, right? Let's say I'm going to use Clay Heitkamp as an example because I know he works there and I'm a good friend of Clay's, right? Yep. So, hey, Clay's doing great at his job. Probably not Clay, but
okay, bro, he's put him on blast.
No, I'm kidding. Clay does a good job, I've heard.
He does.
But if Clay is ready for a promotion, in theory, you're already probably planning on replacing Clay because someone's got to fill Clay's shoes.
Right.
I've worked for private equity firms that don't even replace people when they leave, right? So if you have, 1, 2, 3 manager 2 leaves, they just tell manager 1 and 3 to soup up the mess with no plans of refilling, right? I understand the meantime, right? Mitch puts his notice in, quits on us. We got to do it for a little while, but to absorb all of that, and you also said it, and reward them for that, right? Like what they do, I'm big on input and output, right? You're putting in all the energy, and then I'm outputting into you, whether that's time off, work-life balance, or even financials, right? There's a lot of ways to balance that out. So I think it's really cool that you think like that, because I do personally know not every company thinks like that about replacing people behind there. So,
well, Bill, for me, it all goes back to screening would-be employees for positive attitude. I mean, it's not scientific, but it's made a huge difference in the culture of our company. I don't sense that we have inter-office politics. I don't sense that, we have a lot of heavy egos. Now, everybody has a little bit of an ego, and they should have. But, when you have people rowing in the same direction and, maybe somebody, has to take another opportunity, or you're ready for it because you've got someone who's like-minded and who's got a positive attitude and who is a known commodity. So you don't have to go outside and, try to recruit from Timbuktu. We've been very successful. We're kind of a go-to employer right now. People want to come work for us. It's a great environment. We've got a fitness center. We, when you work hard. When you play hard, and that's our philosophy.
Well, I think that probably stems from baseball. We'll jump into that here in a little bit. But you seem like someone who's really perceptive. Like you notice the world. I think you said that before we turned the cameras on. You talked about how maybe your perception over the last decade, you realized maybe one of your big strong suits. Where did that come from? Because I want to say this, you notice animals, you notice patterns, you notice people, positivity.
I have always found people interesting. And so I think I am perceptive. I study body language. I talked about walking out of a room with your chest out and your, chin up and a smile on you. But I notice people. It's not to spy on them, but I watch how people carry themselves, how they walk. Are they slumped shoulders, or is their head down, or they kind of, or are they, walking like they've got something important to do?
What do most people miss? I think I would turn that the other way. You're talking about perception of what you can see. What do you think most people nowadays miss? Because I know what I feel is like social media has taken away, even handshakes, like a handshake of being present with somebody. What do you think most people miss when they're being perceptive in general? Does anything come to mind?
Oh boy. I just think just being observant. I don't know how else to really describe that. For me, it kind of comes naturally. I had mentioned to you at the outset before we were on air that I have been measured, and I've got a high emotional intelligence quotient, and I'm right-brained. I'm not left-brained. I got through law school by the grace of God, partly because I could write like you, but I've also learned to trust my sixth sense, and over 25 or 30 years, I've been right more than I've been wrong when I've trusted my gut.
I think going with your gut is a huge thing, and I'm not saying that because I have a larger gut than you, but I do believe that I believe that a lot of the decisions that I've had to make on the fence in my career as a professional, there's some evidence in front of you, but it's not always as clear and obvious and black and white. And you need to make a decision, and I've always just trusted my gut. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I'd rather be wrong knowing I made the decision I thought was right and not kind of questioning how people do that. But my curiosity for you, you're 2 or 3 years older than me, so you got a few years under your belt.
2 or 3,
yeah.
Did you learn these things when you were younger, or was it an acclimation over the time? Because my thing is I've now learned in my job, the more reps I get, the more experience I get, and that sounds very easy, right? But I'm in a very high volume job right now, so I think I'm learning at a faster pace than most because I'm doing so many reps and so high volume, right? So I don't know if I would say, do you learn based off of age or maybe experience, but when did you learn all these traits to be a people reader and know that change for Celina Insurance Group that you go back to, or maybe you weren't doing the great, that you changed that culture?
It's nothing really conscious, Bill. It's experience and has taken place over time, and nobody had to point me in the right. One of the things I'm really keen on is being authentic. Don't try to be something you're not. We're all unique children of God, and we have to be authentic. And I've tried to be authentic, for good or for bad. And what you see is what you get.
Well, authenticity is a big part of why we do this podcast. I think it's why we're seeing success, and to people who are listening, take it or leave it. But like, being your most authentic self is truly freedom. And to me, it's no matter what you feel, as long as it's authentic, nobody can certainly be mad at that. I mean, they can disagree.
And people can see through phoniness, I think. I'm a local guy. I like being a local guy. I kind of left Celina, Ohio, in the rearview mirror in 1968 when I graduated from high school. Went away to college, DePaul University in Greencastle, Indiana. Came back and went to law school. I went to undergrad at DePaul. Went to law school at Ohio Northern in Ada. And then I moved back to Indiana and had some other experiences there. But I was just ready to get out of here, and I didn't know which way the road was going to lead. But I felt as long as I was doing positive things, that somehow, some way, it would all work out in the long run, and it has.
Why did you want to leave? I think there's a lot of people that are listening, especially our listeners. We get that a lot on socials, at least. They say, we had this person comment. I'm not going to blast anybody, but they said something to the effect of one of our episodes. They said, "Well, that's why we leave." And I said something to the effect, and they actually, it was authentic and it was a nice exchange. But I said, well, what's wrong with digging in and trying to change this thing that's causing you to leave? Why did you leave?
Well, mine was more personal. There was a certain amount of dysfunction in our family, and I was the oldest child, oldest son. I had a lot of pressure on me, Mitch, and just for a variety of reasons, I just felt a need to cut my teeth somewhere else and have some experiences somewhere outside of Celina. It was not a knock at all against Celina or Mercer County. It was more a personal thing. I just needed to self-develop in another environment.
What brought you back?
Age and marriage and family. I got married late, 36. We had kids late, and I had an opportunity that wasn't going to be, present forever. And I knew that. I represent the fourth generation of my family to, help lead the Celina group, and it just wasn't going to be there forever. I couldn't have worked with my dad for a long period of time. we were just very different personalities. No dislike or just distrust. He was a brilliant guy, but we were very different personalities. And I did work with him for about 5 years, and he gave me a certain amount of freedom and a certain amount of reign, and it all worked out.
How hard was it to separate your tenure or your dreams from his? I think I run through that too. And Bill, you've talked about it with Riker. I don't want to go too far because I want to ask you this question, but there's a lot of challenge sometimes with sort of trying to replicate your dreams on your children. Like if my children wake up tomorrow and say, I want nothing to do with the food truck, I think it was because of my dad that I say that that's okay. I would be the fourth generation of bull semen specialists in Cobra Select Sires and my cattle breeders. Right. And I told Dad again, just like everything else, it's not for me. I don't need to be hand deep, shoulder deep inside of a cow every day. Yeah. And
he does it occasionally on weekends.
Yeah, just for fun, to pass the time, to lose a bar bet or something.
I still got it.
Yeah, he still got it. No, but it was because of my father that I was able to be accepting that maybe that wasn't for me. How hard was it to separate your dad's dreams from your own?
Well, I kept him pretty quiet. My dad was a John Wayne-esque individual. He was 6'2", 230, graduate of Columbia Law School. When Dwight Eisenhower was president of Columbia, Eisenhower then wanted to become president of the United States. He was a young naval officer. He was a certified writing instructor, and then later on went on to do the Iditarod. I mean, he was kind of bigger than life, and he cast a long shadow, Mitch. So I didn't really dare buck him too much. I tried to take the best of what he had to offer, and when the time came that I could put my own spin on things and be true to myself. But I have an opportunity that I'm very fortunate to have, and I know that.
It sounds like a lot of pressure, though. Is that part of the pressure of why you left?
Absolutely, it was most of it.
What would your advice be? Because we like to tie this back to the area and our listeners a little bit. What would your advice be to those that are in similar steps, whether it's a very successful brother and sister, right, where there's pressure, or maybe
even not family too,
or not family, right? Just any sort of that pressure in the job when they're maybe finding themselves in their early to mid 20s, right? What would any words of wisdom to the listeners out there that may be experiencing something similar?
Well, if you can find groups of other folks that you can bounce things off of. It's say no man is an island. And it's important to have a sounding board. I was fortunate to be part of this Young Presidents Organization. There was nothing comparable to it in Celina or Mercer County. I was just lucky. I'm in a group with the Red Zoners. And besides, having some friends in high places, confidentiality is the byword in that organization. And it's organized, it's systematized, and it was just very, very helpful to me in my role here in Celina. So, the book of Proverbs says, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. And I really do believe that. So finding folks that can help you sharpen your iron, I think, is important.
That's how I feel. I mean, we're 52 episodes in. We can be a little lovey-dovey, Bill, but I would say I'm a better person now, having surrounded myself with people who are smarter than me in areas that I'm uncomfortable admitting that they're smarter than me in, right? I've always been a sharp guy, but you got to know and internalize, and surrounding myself with good groups of men that genuinely want to cheer for me, not laugh at me when I come up with larger than life ideas.
You maybe you double back for a second. Sure. You asked me about how did I get out from under the shadow or avoid having my dad's passion become my passion. My dad was a certified riding instructor, and we grew up with horses. So when I'm 7 years old, I'm riding a 17 hands high gelding. That's a big horse. And when I was 9, I was showing at horse shows in Celina and Van Wert. And the horses became an obligation. We kept them at the fairground. And, I always had to be out there. I had no friends that were interested. I was the only kid. And when you're, it's like Tom Sawyer in whitewashing the fence. You want to try to, corral somebody else in to help you do it because nobody else had that same interest. And so I liked riding. I knew how to ride. I've done cattle drives out west. I've done pack trips. but I never really wanted to take it to the next level, where I was competing and, going for prizes. So horsemanship and horses were my dad's passion. Baseball was my passion.
You just wanted to please him, though.
Well, not buck the trend. I guess maybe that's the way to
Easier
put it.
just to go with the flow.
Yeah, when you're young.
Get with it or get in line.
Yeah.
I had a very similar dad that ruled with an iron fist. Same that came from a grandpa who ruled with an iron fist.
You guys sound like you need to get a drink after this. I mean, you guys.
But it does. It takes a long line of strong. And I'm going to say this for ourselves and our dads first, and then I'll give the moms the credit too. It takes a long line of strong men to continue a legacy that you guys have this far, right? Like it doesn't just happen by chance, right? That starts with pardon my French, maybe a hard-ass grandpa and then a hard-ass dad, and then maybe you're a little softer with the generation, but it takes that. But we've always tied it back to the women in our lives too, right? Like
Sure.
None of this happens without Tasha in Mitch's corner, Haley in my corner, and I'm sure your wife, I've met her before once, I think, when we were younger, but it takes all those people to kind of make that go. But to tie it back to your dad, when your dad eventually hands the keys over to you, right? And he says, don't blow it. Yep. How did that land then?
I'll never forget it. I mean, I can see it just like it was yesterday. It would have been, early 90s. And we wore suits and ties back then. My dad's last day in the office, he had on a navy blue pinstripe 3-piece suit with a vest. He carried a black hardbound leather briefcase. And I walked him to the elevator on our second floor, the executive floor, and this was the last time he was going to be in the home office in senior executive role. So he punches the button on the elevator, steps in, turns around, sticks out his hand. I stuck out mine. We shook. He says, "Don't blow it," and the door is closed.
That's like a scene out of a movie.
They didn't even know what trauma was back in the day.
Well, I mean, I could look back on it and laugh. But to myself, I said, we're okay. We'll be all right.
Did it fuel you though? I mean, how did that impact you? I mean, to me, that hurt my heart to hear that. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm more of an empath though.
Right.
And Bill's, you respond to it maybe, Bill, because
that was my dad. I mean, that's just the way he was.
People, I don't remember what the video was. I think when I was sick at school, and it went on one of the clips on how I threw up in the principal's office. And
they go buck wild on that.
Yeah, and my dad was like, "It's all right. He's staying at school, right? Like he would not come pick me up. He says he's fine. Like just put him in the corner somewhere." So like growing up with that, I don't think it's trauma. I do not view it as trauma, but some people call it trauma. To me, I had a very hard-ass grandpa and a very hard-ass dad, and they pushed me so far to be who I am today that without them, I wouldn't be where I'm at in my professional career, probably my home career. Now, I have taken some lessons the other way from them, and I will say I'm more of a compassioning, loving father than my dad ever was.
I have to say that about you. When we first met, it was very much all business. And maybe being someone around me who's your yang, right? Yeah. Like I'm your balance. That's sort of, what you're saying, Bill Montgomery. You surround yourself with people who hold you accountable. I think you've held me accountable to a standard of being better with excellence and not being so loosey-goosey or having a business plan or whatever and not being so, right-brained. But at the same time, I have to give you credit in episode 52. You are such a different person than the first person I met. Your compassion is completely different. The way you father is even stronger than it was. I'm not saying that you were doing anything poor. It's just I love seeing your growth on that side because as I measure myself as a man, I'm here to cheer you on because that compassion is completely, it's not even, I feel so comfortable coming to you when I have an emotional need, whereas before it was almost guarded. Yeah. It was very nerve-wracking to come to Bill because it was like, yeah, whatever, man. Figure it out. Yeah, whatever. Tough it up.
But Grandpa Montgomery was probably a little bit more like I am. He wasn't the perfectionist. He didn't have to have, the new fence row absolutely straight, with a level on it. Whereas, for my dad, everything had to be absolutely perfect. And you couldn't have a crooked fence. You couldn't have a dock that wasn't level.
How intentional have you been about not passing that pressure on to your kids?
Very, very intentional. Because I remembered the pressure I had on me as a little kid to take the, horsemanship to another level. And it turned me against it really. And I would say all of my siblings, it didn't become a lifelong thing like it had been, with our dad. So when, say, one of our kids said, well, I don't want to play football anymore. I don't want to, play baseball anymore. And I didn't question them or quiz them or say, you're going to get out there. No, we let it go and tried to support them and help them find their way.
You feel the same way, Bill Ray?
That's a loaded question for me.
I'm good at those.
Yeah. I would say that from my grandfather, which is my first lasting memory of probably this tree that I'm talking about. Very hard ass, very, very direct to the fact. He had 6 boys that he raised himself. My grandma on that side had left him when all 6 boys were very young for another man. So he learned all my uncles and dad learned very young, and there wasn't questions. Grandpa said, do this. We did it. There's no questions asked. If not, you got your ass spanked. That's just how the world worked. Turning around to Dad had the same philosophy in life. Dad worked at Honda. Dad worked really hard. He was a single father. I lived with my dad the whole life. It's almost like a repeating thing. So I told myself if I was ever going to get married and have kids, I was going to make sure I did everything to ensure that I had a woman in my life that was going to be around my family, because I did lack, probably nurturing to some degree. And it's just what I grew up with, and it's what I know. And I thoroughly enjoy who I am today because of that.
Great.
But I have, I look back at it. I can say in 18 years of my dad, I've never heard him once say I love you, right? So what I promise myself and Riker is I tell him I love him every single day. Mm-hmm. I do hug him. I do give him kisses, right? When my dad is, but guys don't kiss, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, well, he's 7, he's 8, he needs a little nurturing and a little loving. But on the flip side, I am still a hard ass to some things, and there are non-negotiables in this house. We do not lie. We treat everybody with respect. We do the right things. And we just continue to foster a good person. And that's my goal. Yep. If he loves sports, he plays football, he plays baseball, he does everything. If he says he wants to quit baseball this summer, I'm going to push him a little bit. I'm going to say, hey, let's get back out there one more year. Let's try it. And if he kicks a fit about it, I'll say, okay, we don't have to play, right? Like, we don't have to do that. He doesn't play soccer now. I didn't hold him to that, even though I wanted him to play just to stay at it. So the biggest thing I would say is I have found a different route to parent with the same results, I believe. I think I'm still going to raise a strong, disciplined man, but will also be able to show caring and loving side as well. Yeah, so I'm kind of mixing that, but I think that's partially too because I got a woman on my side still where my dad and grandpa did not.
Yeah, very interesting.
You talk about that same thing with love.
Yeah.
You said one of your favorite things beyond baseball is your wife, and that was a huge part of...
Yeah, I got lucky when I met Suzanne.
Can you tell that story real quick? Because I think it's pertinent and I don't have an opportunity to slide this in. But Can you tell people how you met your wife? I think this is fascinating, Bill Ray, that just the sheer happenstance.
Well, I was living in Indiana, rural Frankfort, Indiana, Clinton County. I had done a stint in the Indiana House of Representatives. I was the chairman of the Indiana Public Service Commission, which is like the PUCO in Ohio, utility regulator. And I had an invitation to go to a friend's 35th birthday party on the North Shore of Chicago. Kevin Phillips was his name. Kevin and I had been roommates for a summer in London, for me, between college and law school. And it was a Wednesday night, July 3rd, 1985. And I almost turned off on State Road 47, going north on I-65. I almost turned off on 47 to go home. It would have been a long 4th of July weekend. I thought, do I really want to drive another 4 hours to Chicago? And I'd already arranged for my dog to be taken care of. I thought, oh, what the heck? I'm just going to keep pushing on 65. So I get to this North Shore Country Club, and there are probably 200 people there. And it was a hat party. So you had to wear some kind of a funky hat. But Kevin introduced me to this young lady who was there. She was wearing a Filipino hat, kind of a straw type, round, big round hat. And she was smoking a cigar. I thought, well, this is interesting. And we kind of got acquainted that night. And she was from Seymour, Indiana, had grown up with John Mellencamp. And that's a whole other story. But we kind of hit it off, and she had won 2 tickets through the Denver Post. She was living in Denver, going through a divorce, had a 2-year-old son, and so she and her son also went to Chicago. She was friends of the same guy I was and his wife. So it was totally by chance that we met, hit it off. I'm Frankfurt. She's Seymour, which is, hour and a half away. So we decided to, let's see if there's some spark here. So in 2 weeks hence, she came back to Indiana, and we did airfare wars were going on at that time. So airlines were cheap, and we saw each other twice a month. She'd either fly to Indianapolis or I'd fly to Denver. And a year later, we were married.
Which high stress moment, though, changed how you see fear?
The legendary Green Bay Packer coach, Vince Lombardi, said fear is the greatest motivator. And that might have worked for him in the 1950s and 60s. And to some extent, it probably worked for my dad. You can get results. That didn't work for me, and so I had to wait for my moment. I don't know. I'll tell you what really scared me was DePauw University. DePauw was a pretty good academic institution, and I was scared, to beat the band when I wasn't sure I could make it. Celina was a decent school system, but I really, really was afraid my first year, and so I just doubled down and did pretty well. I remember that as being my mother sent me 2 Valium in an envelope before my first set of finals because I was so scared, couldn't sleep, couldn't hold the pen because I was sweating so much. That I remember that as being a fearful experience, really more than anything in the work environment. Anytime taking tests, I'm not a great test taker, so there was always a little fear element when I had to take a big test.
If somebody is feeling that right now, we get that a lot with the show. We get a lot of people that talk about, well, I didn't start this business because I was scared, or I don't want to quit this job and go all in on this other thing that's doing well. Specifically me too. I run through this all the time because you want to quantify it from X salary to zero, like it would go to zero, right? Any advice for me about failure or just how you should perceive it?
Mitch, I've never started a business, and I think one of the questions you posed to me earlier was, is it harder to start a business or is it harder to maintain a business that's already in existence? And I think they're just two different animals. I think starting a business or starting any enterprise takes a lot of guts, and it takes some faith. What I'm doing and have done with the help of many others is take an existing institution that probably had some needs and some wants and some recalibrating, and making it work and not being fearful of making decisions. Sometimes the worst decision you can make is not making one, because even if it's wrong, you can adjust. And my leadership style, and I call it leadership as opposed to management, is I want to elicit opinions from people. I want to let them, weigh in, but I don't believe in consensus management. The buck has to stop somewhere. So after I've, gotten folks' opinions on a certain subject, then I make the decision.
I think I'm listening more to my team this year than ever. Hey, what do we need to do to rearrange? How can I make your life easier? It's no longer just, this is the way I think it should work because it worked. Like, how do we optimize and excel? And that's year 3 for me. I mean, you're a 100+ year company, but it's still relative, I would think. It's sort of heading that way.
I would say that, the important part of that is you can, as a good leader, you can guide people to kind of the right answer, right? Like, I'm not going to make Mitch take this answer, but I can help him see what I see, right? That's leadership. Here's why we're doing this, right? Mitch is only seeing left. Mitch, you got to come see middle and right here, and now you got to see the whole picture to make a better decision. But there are some people that are so narrowed that I'm only going to hear this, and because it's the only thing they want to hear, right? Maybe Phil was that good bounce off there of you a little bit to say, hey, I got to play devil's advocate here, Bill. You need to see the other side of the coin a little bit to make a better decision. Like I said, at the end of the day, I take a lot of pride in my job. I think a lot of us do. Of I'm the decision maker in a lot of these things, right? And I got to be the one to face the shame when we mess up.
Right.
And on the other side, when you do really good, no one pats you on the back. It's just expected, right? Because that's what we get paid to do. But what we don't get paid to do is play baseball, Bill. Unfortunately, we did not make it as far as our good friend Seth Lonsway, who is getting paid to play baseball. Right. Seth, who is now going to be a father of twin boys. I don't know if you saw that.
And we're going to see Seth in a few weeks when some of us go out to Arizona.
You're alumni now. Alumnus. You're both alumnus.
Yeah, he was on the
podcast as well.
Yeah.
Oh, is that right?
We've had some big names. We had Craig Stammen before he's become a general manager now.
And that's something.
Yeah, that was cool. But when did baseball for you become bigger than a game, right? Like it's a love for you. It's a passion. It's not just a game you played in high school. When did you kind of notice that was going to carry you throughout your life?
Well, Mitch probably knows this. My earliest experience was on the farm outside of Mendon on Deep Cut Road. We lived there until I was, my dad was a prosecuting attorney of Mercer County, and we had a farm. And so until I started kindergarten in 1955, it was just my sister Betsy and I on the farm. And I can remember throwing rocks at the big red 55-gallon Marathon gas tank in the barnyard. And I couldn't read, but I liked to try to hit the white spot on that tank. And then we did move to Celina, and my dad's company sponsored a Little League team, and he asked Leon Shaner and another fellow who I think's name was Herb Baser, and I'm 7 years old. There was no formal Little League then, and there weren't any real rules, but he asked him to coach this team and put his 7-year-old son Billy on that team. And, my pants, hit the ground. I mean, I was a little kid, and I didn't start. I know I didn't get a hit all year, but I loved wearing that uniform and being part of things and being around, the big guys. And I've just always, had the bug. I'm passionate about the game. I was able to play 4 years in college, never a star, but I've had some really wonderful experiences and met some terrific people just through baseball.
Why does it continue in your life beyond just face value? Like what keeps it? What's the staying power of baseball for you?
I would say 15, 20 years ago, Suzanne, my bride said to me, why don't you consider making, baseball and the improvement of lives, one of your life's missions? She said, you're already doing a lot of that. I said, yeah, you're probably right. So that's when it kind of really hit home to me that, this isn't just about the game. It is about a mission of helping young folks improve their lives, but using baseball, in my case, as a vehicle in other people's experiences or philosophy. It could be music, it could be art, it could be really anything. For me, it's baseball. And they say we all go crazy in different ways, and maybe I'm going crazy, but I've just always I have loved the game. I've never not loved the game. And when we moved back to Celina, I'd had the privilege in Indiana of serving on the Indianapolis Indians board of directors. The Indians were still are a AAA franchise. They had just severed ties with the Reds. They couldn't get along with Dick Wagner, who was the Reds' general manager, but they affiliated with the Montreal Expos. And the Expos in those days, I'm going to say this was 82, 83, Expos were a fine organization. And it was a shame that that franchise, had to leave and they became the Washington Nationals. But so when we moved back to Celina, it wasn't probably 6 months later that I read an article in the Dayton Daily News about a guy from Celina named Dave Schmidt who was interested in starting a franchise to participate in the Great Lakes Summer Collegiate League, a wood bat league sanctioned in part by Major League Baseball, and bringing kids from all over the country. Lima already had a team. And so I reached out to Dave. It was his idea. It was always his idea. But there were several of us local fellows who joined forces with Dave, and we had to petition the league, and they had to come down and approve our field and all sorts of things. But here we are, 30-some years later, and we're the second oldest franchise behind Lima. And it's still a natural rivalry. So, and we through the Right State program, which basically Rob Howell and I started. I mean, I've seen some young people really like Bill Ray here, really, make great strides in their lives. But baseball was perhaps the hook that brought many of them to the Lake campus into higher education. It's the same way with the Mariners. These are all college kids. they're trying to make it to the next level. They're trying to become pros. But I get the satisfaction of just, seeing the improvement, seeing the camaraderie, and just being around it. I love being around it.
No, that is great. And you guys were a huge part of Wright State Lake. I was privileged to be part of that first season there. So,
and you could play a little bit.
I appreciate that. I like to tell people I used to be good, and nobody believes me until they go to New Knox.
I believe you. I went to a batting cage and I watched you rip them apart when you're making contact. What do you say to that? Show me those people, Bill Ray. I'm gonna beat them up.
Oh, they're out there. There's Monty. Monty's for sure
He
one.
makes fun of my hair.
You're always a hater.
Whatever.
The question I think I wanted to get out of you today was, I've never known the story behind them redubbing Montgomery Field after you. How did that transpire? I believe it was a donation, and they honored you with that.
Well, it is.
What kind of an honor was that to be named after a baseball field?
It's my family's name, really.
That's what I meant. Sorry,
it's not mine. In 2007, and the Reds were a big part of this. I kind of came up with this idea and did a lot of research about how do we play ball in the northern climate when others aren't playing, and it was going to take an artificial turf. Some people were for it, some people were against it, but I did the research and got different kind of opinions and manufacturers and vendors, but I had to raise the money to put this field in, and so the Celina group put in a substantial amount. My father, Don, put in another significant amount, and Suzanne and I borrowed every single penny of $50,000 so that we could make this thing happen. And I don't like to really talk about money, but it was something we took out a second mortgage because I wanted to see this thing happen. And so on the day of the dedication, Galen Cisco was here, Jim O'Toole, the Reds Hall of Fame pitcher, and a number of former Reds players came up to help us dedicate that field.
Yeah.
And Sharon LaRue was the mayor at that time, and when she took the podium, she announced that the field would, from there on after be named Montgomery Field, and the city council blessed that in a formal way through legislation. So that's how that thing came about. And
that's
lately it's become the Mont, and I don't know, that's just somebody's idea.
Can I ask you a question about success? I think one of the things I'm currently going through right now, just personally, and I know I have such good advice here, is my measurement of success is changing. I think I started to chase it as money means success, right? And I think that was just a natural course of action, seeing other people have things. But then I started to realize that having time in the morning to have coffee and relax and be at peace with myself, or in your case, maybe gardening or something, right? Like, how do you measure success now versus maybe how you used to, or has it always been that way?
No, I think to answer that question, I'm going to point you, and you'll have to look it up. There's a poem by Robert Louis Stevenson that says, "That man is a success." And you might want to Google that later on because it's probably over 100 years old, but it really kind of says it all. And something like, that man is a success who laughs often, who, blah, 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 something about children, something about planting a flower. And that, you'll have to read the poem because to me, that really kind of encapsulates it. But, Suzanne and I live on 24 acres, 5 miles northeast of Celina. I like to say we're in Greater Neptune, just off of Riley Road and on Howick Road. But it's a haven. It's a rural haven. We were very lucky to find that property many years ago, and then were able to build on it 15 years ago. But there's all manner of wildlife. It's serene. It's quiet, and we're only 5 miles from Celina. So I like to spend a lot of my pensive time in front of a big, huge picture window, perhaps with my dog and a cup of coffee. And I feed the birds. I'm a birder, and I find them uplifting. And they may not need my help, but I like to think that they do, and that I can, provide that a little bit. But there's another passage in the Bible, and it says, be still and know that I am God. Sometimes it's just good to be still and contemplate You don't even have to be saying anything or thinking any great lofty thoughts, but just being still.
I'm just letting that thing sink in for people who are listening. I think that's very astute, and it hits home for me. I think very much so. Always constantly running and constantly trying to do or look for the next biggest thing. And oftentimes what I get back to when I do sit still with myself is I go, it's right here in front of you, buddy. It's literally right here. You keep looking left and right and over this hill as if some kind of magic pot of gold is going to be there. But the investment that we make in 52 episodes has made impact on people. It's kept people company. It's helped people with loneliness. It's helped people with advice. It's helped people explain stories that they never had in the past or never knew about what was right there in their backyard. How many times do we get that, Bill? I didn't even know that about that guy.
Oh, yeah. We had one just for Sheriff Timmerman this week where they just talked about how great he was and everything else like that. So
it's more than coaching. It's great. It's teaching. I used to observe Rob Howell when he coached the Lake Campus team. Rob liked to take the third base dugout so he could stand in the third base coaching box, and when a play would take place on the field, he could turn to the bench, maybe walk halfway over to the dugout and say, hey, do you know what just happened here? Or what would you do in that situation? Rob was always teaching. He's one of the best examples that I can think of as a teacher. And so for me, a great coach is a great teacher, first and foremost. Then he's a coach.
yeah, Rob Howe once told me, and I think it was Ernie Ramel and Shaney, that back then the tail wagged the dog. Nowadays the dog wags the tail. So I think he knew we got away with a little bit that first year, having a little too much fun. So
there's no question about that.
Where does faith play a role in this too? You've thrown some scripture out there, and you've obviously baseball is very important as the compass in a way, or the method to become a way for people to learn about teamwork and such. Where does faith live in your life, or how has faith impacted your trajectory?
Jesus said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." And the concept of God and in faith is something that's kind of hard to grasp sometimes. But Jesus was real, and that's where I have to put my faith. There was God among us that walked the earth, and died for all of our sins, and for those of us who believe in Him. And none of us are perfect. We're all striving. We're all still looking, and sometimes we have even more doubts than we did 30 years ago. But we have to keep trying to nourish ourselves with good friends and good material. Reading, filling our hearts and our heads with good things, starting with Scripture.
Has it changed over the years? I know when you said you went to college, you had a philosophy teacher that sort of changed your mind about. So sorry.
Well, yeah. I mean, I
is that an OG's because it's a good reference? That's a long, or just let's not open that can of worms?
I was really searching when I left here. My family had split up. It was my parents, and the world that I knew in Celina, Ohio, was flipped upside down. The Vietnam War was raging. And I just had a lot of questions. And at second semester, my freshman year, I took a intro to philosophy, and there were a number of upperclassmen in that class, and it was taught. And I'm at a Methodist college, for heaven's sakes, but the professor, his name was Carl Putz, P-U-T-Z, was an atheist, an avowed atheist. And so, when you're writing your papers and your themes and you're discussing things in class, well, do I play into this guy's hands or? And actually, he was very fair to me. I remember I think I actually got a B in that course, but boy, did I question things. I mean, he was a kind of if the weather was nice, you'd go outside, and he'd climb up in a tree. I mean, how some of these guys, philosophers are.
Yeah, have you met my friend Mitch?
What do you hope people say that you stood for when your time on this earth is done? What do you hope that your legacy is for Bill Montgomery?
That he was a good person. And that he cared about people. That's it.
Well, before we go, this is very important. This is a very important part of our show. Okay. It's a staple, actually. 52 episodes. We have a final game show. This one's called Home Run or Hot Dog. This one's going to be just for Bill Montgomery over here. We'll take it at your speed. But before we let you go, it's Home Run or Hot Dog. If I'm going to name a sentence, maybe some kind of phrase, If it excites you, it's a home run. If you could get on board with that. If you'd rather sit it out and eat a hot dog in the stands, that's a hot dog. Okay. So you have those two abilities. One sentence why, if you need to explain why, but I'll say home run or hot dog. Are you interested in playing?
Yep.
You have your legal team. Everyone's got that good to go. Bill Ray, you've got our legal team on there. Okay.
He's cleared. I got an email.
Lammers was a drummer in his band. They played called the Accents. That's too much. We don't have time. We could talk to you for decades.
So you knew Tom?
I know of Tom, and
he was
I know
a great guy.
Yeah,
I miss him.
That is a fun fact for you guys at the end of the episode. Okay, here we go. Home run. If you're going to take it, you're going to knock it out of the park, or a hot dog. You ready?
Yep.
Moving away for 5 years in your 20s. Home run or hot dog?
Oh, home run.
Okay. Starting a business with a close friend. Home run or hot dog?
Well, I didn't start a business with a good friend.
Well, would you do it if you had the chance?
Yes.
So home run.
Home run.
Okay.
Yep.
Buying land before you know what you'd build on it.
Home run.
All right. Coaching youth sports even though it eats time with your wife.
Oh, home run.
Okay. Taking over a family business.
Home run.
All right.
But with a lot of help.
Okay, perfect.
Home run with some hot dogs.
Yeah.
Speaking up when something feels wrong. Home run or hot dog?
Home run.
We're on a roll right now. Wearing Reds gear in public even though they're on a losing streak.
Hot dog.
There you go. Turning a passion into a mission.
Oh, home run.
Slowing down on purpose.
Home run.
Letting your kids choose a totally different path.
Yeah, home run.
There we go. That's Bill Montgomery. Thank you for coming into the studio. Thanks for chatting with us. It was amazing.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I hope you had fun.
Yep.
Bill Ray, anything to say before we go and get out of here?
No, I don't think so, but I'm going to go on the limb. The Super Bowl's this Sunday. You'll hear this after the game. I've got Patriots 21-17.
Wow, I'm going to take the Seahawks powerhouse. Again, thank you guys for coming out to Caddies. That'll happen for next week, but we appreciate you being here for episode 53, the first one of the new season. Take care, guys. Thanks for watching.